The call came at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning while I was standing in the parking lot of the hospital where I worked, about to clock in for a 12-hour shift. I almost didn't answer. The number was my bank's fraud department. I figured it was one of those automated alerts. Maybe I tapped my card somewhere weird, bought something that flagged their system. I deal with it on my lunch break. Something made me pick up anyway. "Miss Calloway." The man's voice was calm, measured, the kind of voice trained not to alarm people right before it says something alarming. "This is the fraud and risk department at First National. We're calling regarding your home equity line of credit. There appears to be an outstanding draw of $89,000 that was initiated last month. We wanted to confirm you authorized this transaction before we proceed." I sat down on the curb. Not because my legs gave out, not because I fainted, I just sat down, right there on the asphalt, in my scrubs, with my badge still in my hand. "I'm sorry," I said. "How much?" He repeated it. $89,000. I had never touched that line of credit. I opened it 2 years ago when I bought the house, kept it as an emergency buffer. I was proud of myself for having it. My financial advisor had called it smart leveraging. I told my mother about it like I was showing her a trophy. I don't know why I told her. I think I wanted her to be proud of me. I grew up the responsible one. That's not a compliment in the way people think it is. It's more like a job title you never applied for. My younger brother was the creative one, the sensitive one, the one who needed protecting. My younger sister was the baby, the favourite, the one everyone made excuses for. And I was the one who handled things. I put myself through nursing school. I worked doubles on weekends and took out loans that I paid back early. When I was 26, I bought a house in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. A small house, nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a fence that needed replacing, neighbours who waved. Mine. My mother helped me move in. She cried a little when we hung the curtains. I thought it was because she was proud. I was 31 when the phone rang in that parking lot. I hadn't even known my mother had my home equity account information. I didn't remember giving it to her, but when I got home that night and sat at my kitchen table and started pulling up records, I found it, a form I'd signed 2 years earlier, when she'd offered to help organise my paperwork during a visit. There it was. Her name on the authorised user form, my signature below it dated the same week she'd stayed with me. I don't know if she forged it or if I'd signed something without fully reading it. I've turned that question over in my mind so many times it's worn smooth now, like a stone in a river. It doesn't change what she did with it. She drew $89,000 from my home equity line. She used it to buy my sister a house. My sister had been complaining about her apartment for 2 years. Too small, too expensive, bad neighbourhood, landlord didn't fix anything. She was 33, living with her boyfriend, and she wanted to own something. That was reasonable. That was understandable. What wasn't understandable was that she apparently had a plan for how to get it. I found out slowly. That's the thing no one tells you about being financially betrayed by family. It's not a single moment. It unravels in pieces, each one worse than the last. First, it was the bank call. Then it was the records, the transfer, the date, the account it went to. Then it was the phone call to my aunt, my mother's sister, who lives 2 states away and had no idea I didn't know. "Sweetheart, I thought you agreed to give them the down payment," she said. "Your mum said you offered." I didn't say anything for a long moment. "She said I offered," I repeated. That's what she told everyone. I hung up and sat on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. I just slid down the cabinet and sat there because standing required more than I had. My mother had told the entire extended family, my aunts, my uncle, my grandmother before she passed, apparently even my cousin who I hadn't spoken to in 6 years, that I had generously offered to give my sister the money for a house. That I wanted to do it. That it was my gift to her. No one asked me about it because why would they? Everyone knew I was the responsible one. Of course I'd done well enough to be generous. Of course I'd want to take care of my family. I had a mortgage I was managing, a HELOC I'd never touched, and $11,000 in savings. I was not rich. I was careful. There's a difference, and my family had always confused the two. I didn't call my mother that night. I needed to know more before I spoke to her. I needed to not walk into that conversation half blind. I called my bank the next morning and requested every transaction record tied to my HELOC for the past 3 years. I called a real estate attorney friend of mine. We'd gone through nursing school together before she switched careers, and asked her to explain to me what my options were. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything I knew in 2 columns. Facts. Questions. The facts column was devastating. The question column was mostly one question, written larger than the others. Did my sister know? That one kept me up for 3 nights. Because if she knew, if she had asked my mother to do this, if she had cashed out the down payment on a house knowing where it came from, that was different from my mother acting alone. That was something I didn't know how to come back from. I called her on a Thursday evening. I kept my voice even. I asked how her apartment search was going. She paused, just a half second too long, and said, "Oh, actually, we found a place. We're closing next month." "That's great," I said. "How'd you manage the down payment?" Another pause, longer this time. "Mom helped," she said. "Mom helped," I repeated. Yeah, her voice had gone careful, measured. She knew something was wrong. She said she had some savings set aside. I almost left it there. I almost said, "That's wonderful, I'm happy for you," and hung up and pretended for one more day that I didn't know. But I was tired. I had been tired for 31 years. "She didn't have savings," I said. "She used my house." The silence on the other end of the line was its own kind of answer. It wasn't the silence of someone shocked. It wasn't confusion or disbelief or, "Wait, what are you talking about?" It was the silence of someone who'd been waiting for this call and had hoped it would never come. "Lena," she started. "Did you know?" I asked. She didn't answer. I hung up. I want to be honest about what happened inside me in the week that followed. Because I think people expect a certain kind of anger, and what I felt was something more complicated than that. There was anger, yes. A cold, quiet anger that sat in my chest like a stone. But there was also grief. Grief for the version of my family I had carried in my head for 31 years. The one where my mother was proud of me, where my sister looked up to me, where all the sacrifices I'd made had meant something to the people I made them for. That version of my family didn't exist. Maybe it never had. Maybe I'd been building a house of cards this whole time, calling it a home. I made an appointment with a financial attorney. I want to be clear about that because the top comment on every video like this is always, "Call a lawyer," and yes, you should. I did. She walked me through my options: dispute the draw as unauthorized, file a police report, pursue civil litigation. She explained that because my mother was listed as an authorized user on a form I had signed, however that signature had been obtained, it complicated things. It wasn't a clean case of fraud. It was messier than that. It's almost always messier than that. "What do you want the outcome to be?" she asked me. I didn't answer right away. I sat with the question. What did I want? I wanted $89,000 back. I wanted my mother to have not done this. I wanted my sister to have called me 2 years ago and said, "I'm struggling, can you help?" So I could have said, "Not like this, but let's figure something out together." I wanted to live in a world where the people who raised you don't dismantle your financial future to build a house for someone else. I wanted the version of my family that didn't exist. I want the money back, I said finally, and I want them to be held accountable. She nodded and started explaining the process. I set an alert on every one of my financial accounts that same week. I went through every card, every account, every login. I changed passwords. I removed my mother's name from the authorized user form retroactively. Though the attorney told me the damage from that particular form was already done, I called my bank and opened a dispute. I started the process. While I was doing all of this, while I was sitting at my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night working through spreadsheets and legal paperwork, my phone started lighting up. My mother first, then my sister, then my aunt, the same one who had unknowingly broken the news to me, Then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be my sister's boyfriend. I didn't answer any of them. Then my father called. My parents divorced when I was 14. My father had remarried, moved to Arizona, and we had one of those relationships that's cordial but careful. Phone calls on birthdays, visits at Thanksgiving every few years. He wasn't close to my mother. He hadn't been part of the daily fabric of my life for a long time. I had assumed he didn't know any of this was happening. I picked up because I was curious. I heard, he said before I could say anything. From who? Your aunt called me. She's worried about you. He paused. She should be worried about your mother. I hadn't cried yet. I hadn't let myself, but something about his voice, the fact that he was angry on my behalf, quietly and certainly angry, cracked something open in me. She used my house, Dad. I know. She told everyone, I offered. I know that too. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I need to tell you something and I need you to hear me out before you react. I braced myself. I had been bracing for things my whole life. When your grandfather died, he said, my grandfather on my mother's side, who had passed when I was in college, he left a small amount of money. Nothing major. But he left it to you specifically. He told me that himself, before he died. He said, make sure Lena gets her share. She's the one who'll use it right. I hadn't known this. My mother had handled the estate. I had received nothing and hadn't known to ask. Your mother used it for your sister's first car, my father said, and I never said anything because I thought maybe I'd misunderstood, but I don't think I misunderstood. The stone in my chest got heavier. This is a pattern, he said. This isn't the first time. The conversation with my mother happened 10 days after the bank call. Not because I was afraid of it, but because I needed to have my facts straight. I needed to not walk in with accusations I couldn't back up and have her turn it around on me the way she'd always been able to do, make me the one who was ungrateful, dramatic, selfish for wanting something of my own. I drove to her house on a Saturday morning. I didn't call ahead. She answered the door in her robe and immediately smiled. That reflexive, welcoming smile she does. And I walked past her into the kitchen and sat down at her table. We need to talk about the HELOC, I said. The smile stayed on her face for a moment after her eyes changed. That fraction of a second, the eyes knowing what the mouth wasn't ready to admit yet, that's something I'll carry for a long time. Sweetheart. $89,000, I said. You drew it without my knowledge. You told the family I offered. I didn't offer. I didn't know. You signed the form. I signed an authorized user form that I didn't fully read while you were visiting, and you know that. My voice was steady. I had practiced being steady. I want to talk about what happens next, not relitigate how you got access. She sat down across from me, and then she did something I hadn't expected. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She looked at me with this expression I can only describe as resigned, like she had known this conversation was coming and had decided in advance how to play it. Your sister needed a home, she said. You have a home. You have a good job. I thought you'd understand. You didn't give me the chance to understand, I said. You decided for me. You would have said no. Yes, I said. I would have. She nodded slowly, like that confirmed something for her. Like my saying I would have said no, proved that she'd been right to go around me. That was the moment I understood we were not going to fix this. Not today. Not with one conversation. Maybe not ever, because she wasn't sorry she had done it. She was sorry she had been caught. And more than that, she genuinely believed she hadn't done anything wrong. She believed she had the right to make decisions about my money because she was my mother. She had always believed that. I just never had anything large enough for her to take before. I'm filing a dispute with the bank, I said. My attorney is reviewing the case. I'm also removing you from every financial account I have, and I'm asking you not to contact me until we've resolved this legally. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. You're going to file a report against your own mother. I'm going to try to get my money back, I said. What that involves legally is still being determined. After everything I did for you. I know, I said. And I meant it. I knew. I'd been carrying a ledger of what she'd done for me my whole life, and she'd been keeping one too, and apparently the balance owed on mine included my house. I know what you did for me, but that's not how this works. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I walked to the door. She said my name once, in that voice, the voice that used to stop me cold when I was 7, 12, 19. The voice that meant, come back, sit down, you don't get to leave yet. I kept walking. My sister called 3 days later. I answered this time. I didn't plan to, my thumb just moved. I need you to know I didn't ask her to do it, she said immediately. Okay. I knew she was helping. I didn't know it was your money. She said she had savings. Did you ask where the savings came from? A pause. No. Did it occur to you to ask? She didn't answer. I wasn't angry at her in the same way I was angry at my mother, but I wasn't going to pretend that not asking questions is the same as not knowing. She'd received $89,000 and hadn't wondered. Maybe because on some level it was easier not to wonder. Maybe because she'd grown up watching the family redirect resources toward her and had never had reason to question it. I need time, I said, and I need you to understand that this affects more than our relationship. It affects my home. I could lose my house if the dispute doesn't go through. She didn't say anything. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, I said, even though maybe part of me was. I'm telling you because I want you to understand what was taken from me. This wasn't savings, this was my house. She started crying. I didn't. I had cried privately alone in my car the week before. A long, ugly cry that I hadn't let anyone witness. By the time I spoke to my sister, I was past tears. I was just tired and clear. I love you, I said, but I can't talk to you right now. I'll call you when I can. I hung up. The legal process was slow and unglamorous. I want to be honest about that too, because every story like this makes it sound like justice comes fast and clean. It doesn't. It took 4 months of documentation, dispute letters, phone calls, and one very long deposition-style meeting with my attorney before the bank reached a partial resolution. They recovered $61,000 of the $89,000. Based on the unauthorized nature of the draw and the circumstances around the authorized user form. The remaining $28,000 remained in dispute. My attorney told me we could pursue it in civil court. She was honest that it would cost time and money and would keep me legally entangled with my mother for potentially years. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Then I sent my mother a certified letter stating that I considered the debt an outstanding legal obligation, that I had documented everything, and that I would be revisiting civil action at a later date if I chose to. I put it in writing and I kept a copy. And then I stopped, not because I gave up, because I had other things to do with my life than spend it in a courtroom with the woman who was supposed to protect me. I set alerts on every account. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything. I called my bank and asked them to flag any future credit applications tied to my identity. I filed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. I did all the practical things I should have done earlier, and I'm not embarrassed to say I hadn't known to do them before. Nobody tells you to protect yourself from your own family. Nobody prepares you for the idea that the person who helped you hang your curtains might one day use your address to borrow against your house. The thing about being the responsible one in a family is that you never get to fall apart. You never get the luxury of being the one who needs something. You hold everything together, and then, when something falls apart, when something is taken from you, the family looks at you and says, "But you're the strong one." Like strength means you don't get to hurt. Like having a good job means your money isn't really yours. I'm writing this, or telling this, almost a year after that parking lot phone call. I still live in my house. I made my mortgage payments every single month through the dispute process, even when it was difficult, because I wasn't going to lose it. Not after everything. My father and I talk more now. He came to visit in the fall and we sat on my back porch and he said, "I should have said something sooner." I told him he was saying something now. It helped more than I expected it to. I haven't spoken to my mother since that Saturday morning at her kitchen table. Not because I'm punishing her. Because I spent 31 years working hard and holding things together, and I don't have any more room for people who see that work as something they can spend. My sister and I have spoken a few times. Short conversations, careful ones. I don't know what we are to each other now. Something smaller than we were. Maybe something that can grow back into something new. I don't know yet. What I know is this. I know what's in every account. I know every authorized user, every linked contact, every access permission on every financial document I own. I check my credit report quarterly. I keep records. I know my own money now. I know my own house. That's not nothing. After everything, that is actually something. If you're watching this and you're the responsible one, the one who holds it together, the one who's always fine, the one everyone assumes is doing well enough to give, please hear me. Doing well is not the same as owing. Being capable is not the same as being available, and loving your family is not the same as giving them your house. You are allowed to say no, even to the people who raised you. Especially to the people who raised you. I keep coming back to the moment I sat down on that parking lot curb. Not because it was dramatic. It wasn't. It was just a woman in scrubs sitting on asphalt at 8:47 in the morning, holding her phone, trying to process a number that didn't make sense yet. $89,000. In that moment, I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel righteous. I felt small in a way I hadn't felt since I was a kid who just wanted someone to tell her she'd done a good job. What I've learned, slowly, the hard way, is that the consequences of other people's choices always land somewhere. They don't disappear. My mother believed she could quietly redirect my money, tell a story to the family, and that would be that. She underestimated the simple fact that actions don't vanish just because no one's watching. The bank called. The records existed. The truth was always there, waiting to be found. That's not fate or karma in any mystical sense. It's just how the world actually works. What's done leaves a mark. What's taken has to land somewhere. The thing I had to reckon with was my own part in it, not guilt. I didn't take the money. I didn't authorize it. I didn't build the lie. But I had spent years not asking questions. I signed forms without reading them because I didn't want to seem suspicious of my own mother. I told her about my financial wins because I wanted her approval. I left the door open and was surprised when someone walked through it. Growing wiser isn't about becoming cold or paranoid. It's about understanding that love and good judgment are not the same thing, and you need both. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. You can love someone and still read what you're signing. The hardest part of this whole year wasn't the legal process. It wasn't the money, as devastating as that was. It was rebuilding my own sense of what I was worth outside of what I provided. Because I had been the responsible one for so long that I had confused being useful with being valued. When my mother took from me and justified it as family obligation, some part of me almost understood her logic, because I had been operating on that same logic for 31 years. I gave and called it love and never stopped to ask whether it was reciprocated in any form that actually sustained me. What got me through was not softness and not rage either. It was a kind of quiet determination I didn't know I had. Getting up and going to work during the dispute process. Making the mortgage payment every single month. Sitting with an attorney, asking clear questions, taking notes, calling my father back. That steadiness. The ability to keep moving through something that hurt, without collapsing and without becoming someone I didn't want to be. That turned out to be the thing I was most proud of. Not the outcome. The way I handled it. My house is still mine. I still live in it. I still make the payments and check the accounts and know exactly what I own and what I owe. That's what I want for anyone watching this who recognizes something in this story. Not just the financial part, but the feeling of being the one who holds everything together while quietly wondering if anyone would do the same for you. You are allowed to hold on to what you've built. You are allowed to protect it. And when someone takes from you, even someone you love, especially someone you love, you are allowed to say, "This is not okay and I am going to do something about it." That's not cruelty. That's how you survive being good in a world that sometimes mistakes goodness for availability.